What is up, fans? Welcome to a new episode of M2M coverage. This is our football panel. We got analyst Julian Wambach, analyst Ahmed Mustafa, and analyst Edward Gion with us today. We are discussing the formation and collapse of the Super League in the football world. So I'm just going to start off with Julian. Can you explain to us what this proposal was and what went down with all these teams and all this nonsense in the media?
Sure. So Super League, as I'm sure everyone who at least follows football in some sense, was this new proposed continental tournament kind of styling, which I believe was intended to pit eventually 20 of like the biggest clubs from around Europe against each other in sort of a season-long title race tournament that will start with like a classic group stage, then advance to a home and home knockout bracket, classic stuff to announce a winner. And really, it fell apart, and I think it fell apart for a lot of reasons. One, the Champions League already kind of does that. uh, and two, they were trying to sort of use, at least what I saw, as kind of the American sports model in a setting where they're not realizing that Europeans are proud people, and for good reason, because they've got something that works and they've got something that generates billions of dollars and billions of hours watched every year. And they didn't need to base something off of a frankly fairly silly sports model with exclusivity in the leagues and stuff, and no lack of and I guess no pressure of relegation and promotion. So it fell apart very quickly, and we see now an aftermath and questions about what are the next steps going forward.
Yeah, that's very fascinating to hear. I didn't know much about it. I read about it after it started blowing up, all the protests and stuff that were going on. But Ahmed, can you tell me a little bit more about the proposal?
Well, it's been like about 3 years in the making. Some say more. I remember Wegner 10 years ago. He said sooner or later it's going to be a European Super League or something of that sort, because it was always an idea that people knew would make a lot of money, and I guess that's why a lot of these owners that wanted it, these American owners, even though they know nothing about soccer, almost nothing. I think the vice president, or the proposed vice president, was going to be Glazer, who is the owner of Manchester United. He said he hasn't understood the offside rule, and he still doesn't understand it sometimes, something like that. So these people don't really know anything about soccer or football, and they wanted to create this league simply just for more money, because
Yeah.
they're business owners. They're not football owners, if that makes sense.
That actually brings me a question that I want us to come around to later. Is looking at American owners, for instance, what place do they have, you think, in European football? Like, in terms of like, sure, free market capitalism and all that. If people want to buy it and they're willing to pay the price, they should be able to. But we don't have to answer this now. We can come back. But then how much of it is like, should there be vetting? As to who is allowed to be an owner of a top club in the world that has all of that brand and has all of that history to live up to. But on to you, Edward.
Yeah, Edward, I just wanted to ask you, I guess, like, how do you think this proposal would have even fit in to these teams' already busy schedules, right? They're playing so many games a year already. Like, they have UEFA, they have their specific league to their country. How would this proposal even fit in?
Yeah, I just know that soccer or football, mostly players can only play at max like 2 matches per week. Never, never seen a team plays 3 matches in a week. That because just our human bodies is not capable of doing that. Playing for an hour 30 nonstop. I mean, there might be some injuries or there might be some calls now since like VAR is implemented, but really the shortest time is less compared to like other sports like football or American football and basketball and baseball and all other sports you can name. Like soccer is pretty much like a sorry. I'm pretty sure there are other sports maybe have a little bit less playing time or less rest time, but we know that soccer is one of the most popular popular sport in the world. It's like not just in Europe, but in the world. And to me, I mean, I think we're all if the proposal happened, we're gonna be to be honest, right? We might be interested for maybe like the first season when it happens, like oh let's see how it works and stuff. But in the end, the the competition as because the problem was there was no relegation. Like the original clubs who were the founder of the Super League, they cannot be relegated. But there just be the new other five, which the new other five where you're like, wait, how come you guys stay if we finish better, but you guys, so that's the one thing that I think everyone was really pissed about because um, soccer in a way is different because there's divisions. There's different league. There's the best league, and then there's the league that below that, and then below that, and out. English have like a ninth division. Like that's what I know. So implementing soccer with no relegation just goes up the whole pyramid. That's what the most like analysts and football fans say. It would just blow up the pyramid, and yeah, I was really disappointed about that. So that was my take on it when I first heard it.
Interestingly enough, the same thing with sort of the pressure thing. Again, that's sort of when you look at like that idea of uh, divisions and relegation, right? That's a pretty, I think, integral part of football pretty much everywhere in Europe. Most countries that have, a league probably have, a support system, right? They have a growth system from the ground up where players, it helps also players become better, right? Where you can play in a lower tier, a lower league, and then work your way up to the top, knowing that you're always going to be playing for a club that's usually trying to win, right? You're trying to bring yourself up, both financially, but also just for the player's benefit, because you always want that even level of competition. Um, and what you don't want, right, is the creation of super teams. So it's always fun to see a dynasty, but what fun is a dynasty if they have no one, right? If there's no David for Goliath to overcome, right? Goliath isn't nearly as impressive in the same way that David needs to compete with a Goliath, right? And by having sort of this idea, right, where you have promotion and relegation as always a threat, David always has a chance, right? And again, it points back to that American sports models where you have so many, like you have an alphabet soup of restricted leagues, right, that don't have relegation in every sport. The NBA, the NFL, the NHL, the MLB, even Major League Lacrosse. It goes on and on. And actually, interestingly enough, I just found this stat, and this might have been a reason why now, right, as opposed to any time other. I believe this was one of the first, either if not the first, I believe it was the first season where there are now more American owners in the Premier League than there are British owners. Which I want to like the British Premier League, right? There are more American owners than British owners. I don't know what that says about the state of football in England or or what, but it's certainly an interesting thing to think about. And you look at even the defending champions, right? Liverpool is owned by Red Sox group out of Boston, specifically by John Henry. You know, between you and me, as someone from Boston, love John Henry, love the Red Sox. I don't think he cares much about football, right? I don't think he gives two tits about what that stuff matters to
Did you
him.
see
So
his apology video, by the way, Julian?
no, I haven't. I probably
He
should.
was, it was obviously like he was reading off a screen. It was
Mhm.
so obvious that he's reading off a screen. He doesn't know anything, He just owns Fenway Sports Group and they own a bunch of clubs, and he just knew this would probably make a lot of money.
Yeah. Oh, it'd make him billions.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when you look at the clubs that are involved, they're all just like massive markets, right? The smallest market I see is Atletico Madrid, and they're enormous. I don't know what to say.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that's mind blowing that there's more American owners now than British owners, and like even LeBron has a stake in Liverpool, I think, which is
Yeah.
just crazy to me. Like, I don't know, it's definitely becoming like a huge transition from what we've
Yeah,
seen in the past.
and it's pretty clear as well that I don't think they can't have focus group this with fans or anything, right? Because like you look at all the protests that broke out like this past weekend with matches, right? You look at Everton, Arsenal, the hordes of fans like streaming, calling for Stan Kroenke to be ousted. You look at even at Spurs, there were protests, right? The Spurs match. So you have to wonder who exactly thought this was a good idea, because surely they can see there being backlash, right? I don't know. That's something worth looking into as well, for sure.
Even the clubs, the British clubs, they knew what this meant for them if, they didn't have these big clubs in their league. So, you also had teams like Wolverhampton Wanderers, you had teams like Leeds. I think the game, while all this was going on, the game between Leeds and Liverpool, they provided them the same shirts that they wore out. I forgot what they said when they went outside off the pitch, and they put those shirts in the locker room for the Liverpool players as well. But Jurgen Klopp told them not to wear it because you still have to be aware that there's owners, looking at like what the players are doing as well. So it's kind of hard to speak out. But Jurgen Klopp spoke out. A bunch of people spoke out. Pep Guardiola spoke out.
Yeah,
Any
I think
players
Arteta spoke out as well.
Yes.
Yeah, which is good, and that's good that at least the players are on the fan side, because I think
Exactly.
I think that's an important aspect of the game as well. Is something about football is that a lot of these players, right? Football is unique in a sport where you have so many people from all kinds of different backgrounds all around the world who are able to find opportunity through football. Unlike a lot of the sports that we've mentioned, even in the States, right? It was, it's just like a lot of the very best players in the world. You look at Neymar, look at Messi. They come from humble beginnings and now are goats, right?
If you like this video, please consider subscribing to our channel, the M2M Network, for more sports and entertainment content.